I worked as a janitor for 30 years before I was able to save enough money to buy my son Jeff a house. I wanted to give him all of my savings as a wedding present, but I overheard a conversation between Jeff and the doctor. Jeff is your friend. Just worried about your real mother attending the wedding, but why push your stepmother to the limit? Let her have her limbs amputated if it comes to that. It's not like I'll leave her, but if she continues to deteriorate, we may have to consider amputating you. Recovers too quickly. Who knows what kind of drama she'll cause when she discovers that my real mother is attending the wedding instead of her. I discreetly put my bank card away, the card that contains all of my savings, to give Jeff the money as a wedding present because he had his real birth mother to take care of and probably wouldn't need it. Had saved for him after all. I heard Jeff discuss with the doctor in the hospital that since she's getting older, there's no use in wasting money on surgery because the steel pins in her leg aren't a big deal and she won't die from them. Just treat them as they are. She's always been proud, as if she hadn't reached the point where she had to be this way. Long-term hospitalization would have prevented her from attending my wedding. Mandy's parents are both university professors, so how could I allow them to sit with a janitor? The doctor seemed suspicious when he heard this. Jeff, we've been friends for years, and I must remind you that your mother is aging, and if her health isn't, Gina is such a vibrant person that she couldn't possibly bear spending the rest of her life in a wheelchair. Jeff was unmoved by the doctor's remarks, but he made sure to stress that even if the plan was to amputate her, why push her to the limit? The doctor sighed deeply, seeing right through him. She will eventually see the wedding video. You can fool her once, but not forever. There's no need to sacrifice her health for something that won't last. Jeff stood his ground. My birth mother gave me life. Has the authority to arbitrarily deny a mother the opportunity to be present for her son at such a significant time. My birth mother would have discovered me by now if Gina hadn't adopted me, but I'm Gina's only son, so even if she needs an amputation, I won't abandon her. However, only my birth mother is allowed to attend my wedding. When the doctor came back with the medicine, Jeff couldn't help but talk again as they got to the door. She's given everything for you, he said, and I looked at my bank card in my hand, putting it away quietly. Jeff's words hit me like a hammer, each one landing with a painful thud. He halted in the middle of his sentence, observing Jeff's expression, and realized that Jeff had already made up his mind. Jeff wasn't only worried about his birth mother. He was disgusted by me, his janitor of a mother, and ashamed of me. However, had he ever thought that it was me, the janitor, who put him through school and bought him a house and a car, and his sophisticated birth mother and well-educated in-laws hadn't given me a dime? I never thought that the son I'd raised for 30 years would treat me this way, and I passed out on the hospital bed in shock and disbelief. What shocked me even more, though, was that Jeff's cruelty went unpunished. Far more than I could have ever imagined. The doctor promptly attended to my wound and left Jeff wiping my face and hands, assuming I was still asleep and not realizing I was conscious. He then casually started talking to his fiancée, Mandy, saying, "Don't worry, Mandy, my mom loves me so much that all of her money will go to me once I get it. I'll buy you that. Knowing my mother, I swear I'll make sure you have a happy life." A few times, Mandy had made irrational requests, but I always believed that as long as they were happy, nothing else mattered, so I never refused their demands. "The car you want, darling, you've already made the sacrifice by marrying me." Would get to the point where Jeff wanted to use my money to buy her a car. Jeff didn't want me to attend his wedding, but he was okay with me giving him the money for the car because I'm a devoted son, and she won't be there on the wedding day. I deliberately used the most infection-prone tools and didn't operate on her if she didn't have after the wedding. We'll have 2 beautiful babies, and my mom won't be able to move around due to surgery on that leg. So we'll need to take care of her, but her savings will be sufficient to help us raise the kids well. Don't worry, beautiful. He was very little back then, and I remembered walking past the orphanage when he grabbed my sleeve and wouldn't let go. I felt a moment of compassion and felt my eyes fill with tears. I never imagined that he would plan something like this so carefully just to prevent me from attending his wedding. He was 30 years old when I started my own business in an attempt to provide him with a better life. However, when the business failed and no other good job opportunities presented themselves, I was forced to work multiple jobs doing various cleaning tasks. I pinched pennies to provide him with a better life without ever asking for anything in return. Now, I continued to give him a monthly allowance because I was concerned that he might be struggling on his own. I had worried about him for half of my life, only to discover that I couldn't compare to the mother who had left him. If he felt his birth mother was more respectable, let her pay for the car because I wouldn't bother them anymore. Jeff left his phone by the bedside while he was out getting my medication. Since I knew his password, it was simple to unlock it. It was then that I learned he had been in touch with his birth mother for a long time, and she had sent him a picture of the two of them eating dinner together. The woman in the picture resembled me in my younger years, but she looked much younger than I do now. I had spent years saving money for Jeff, never daring to take a break, and always being outside in the sun and wind. Now that his wedding was coming up, I thought I could finally unwind, but I had read online about how much harder it was for young people today to raise children, and I was afraid my grandchildren would suffer, so I worked even harder, day and night, to help them save money. Years of this had taken their toll, and when I looked in the mirror, I realized that I had aged much more than people my age. "Mom, you're so beautiful. Thank you for giving me such great genes," Jeff said, speaking to his birth mother with such love. It was always. He talked more, she said less, and he even video called her a lot. I thought back to my conversations with Jeff, in which I would constantly ask him questions, and he would hardly ever answer video calls or take pictures, except when I asked for money. At the time, I assumed that Jeff might have been shy about expressing his love for me, but now I know that it was because Jeff was embarrassed by me, so I took out my phone and messaged my best friend Heidi, saying that since his birth mother was so amazing, he wouldn't need my assistance going forward. I asked Heidi to help me find the best orthopedic physician so that I could choose the best hospital and the most costly physician. Jeff wanted to take advantage of me and deprive me of everything I owned, but he didn't even treat me with the bare minimum of respect. He believed that I was a selfless mother who would never be able to reprimand him. However, he had forgotten that I was an independent woman before I became a mother, and when Jeff returned and saw me sending "I'm about to have my wedding, and you're such an important guest. I've been looking forward to seeing my heroic mother make her grand entrance," so when he said, "Mom, you're awake," his eyes were full of excitement, and he pretended to sound worried. I always kept my cleaning supplies in their proper place, so if Jeff hadn't moved them, I never would have stepped on the sharp object. It was my fault for being overly concerned. "However, the doctor advised you to take some time off, so you won't be able to attend my wedding." About him, in the past, I let him believe that my feelings were unimportant. I reached out and gently brushed his hair and said, "I was careless, but don't worry, I'll attend your wedding." Jeff's eyes briefly flashed panic, but he soon corrected himself, saying, "No, that's not the case." I smiled quietly as he continued his lies. "Even though you've left me with regrets for the things you've done." He tried to explain that you can't move around too much right now because there will be a lot of socializing at the wedding, and it will be too hard for you. "I'll hire an actor to attend on your behalf since I know you meant well." "But Mom, didn't you say you had some savings for me before the wedding? When will you give it to me?" He began by accusing me of being irresponsible and causing my injury, even going so far as to say he was being kind. Perhaps it was because I hadn't agreed to give the money yet, but Jeff was growing nervous at the time and didn't care that I couldn't move, so he put me in a wheelchair and insisted that I attend his wedding. Forgiving my error and still being willing to accept my money was a very kind gesture. Jeff believed he was keeping it well, but he had no idea that I had already seen his dignified birth mother. "Mandy, the rehearsal mom, is a little shy, so avoid them. I'm afraid the smell of the medicine on you might make them uncomfortable." Jeff ushered me into a tiny, private room before hastily leaving. I rolled myself in the wheelchair in the direction of the location because I had invested money in this wedding and, even though it would be a disappointment, I still wanted to observe it in its brief moment of peace. As I got closer to the location, I heard some of the staff members talking while setting up. "Have you heard that the family was decorating for the wedding? It's pretty intriguing that they're having the real mother attend the wedding as a hired actress instead of the adoptive mother." "Why isn't the adoptive?" "I think the mother is coming herself because she's sick, but how could the adoptive mother be as close to the child?" Of course, he would be closer to his real mother if I were to let her come. I saw his real mother earlier, and she looked like a successful, independent woman, with designer clothes all over her body. "I heard the adoptive mom is here today, which is unfortunate," and their remarks made my chest tighten even more. I pushed my wheelchair in the direction of the banquet hall entrance, which was barely open enough to reveal the figures within. Mandy gave me a pricey camel wool scarf as a welcome gift, and her face was covered in an affable smile. "Carrie, Jeff told me a lot about you and always said you were beautiful." I thought he was just bragging, but now I realize he wasn't. I recalled how Mandy's face was always somber whenever she saw me, and Jeff explained that it was because she wasn't feeling well. She had been sick once, but it seemed like every time they had a meeting when she became ill out of the blue. I assumed she was just young and impressionable, so I didn't hold it against her. However, it turned out that she knew how to curry favor with the elders when it was convenient for her. I didn't blame her because she was, after all, Jeff's fiancée, and his behavior toward me was largely influenced by him. Carrie stepped in. I was taking a call when I heard Mandy talking softly to Jeff. "Your real mom is dressed in expensive clothes, so it's obvious that she has money. If we can win her over, we could get a bigger house and not have to live in the small apartment your mom got us." Mandy was attempting to win Carrie over because she believed she could purchase them a new home. "The apartment I purchased for them was only because they were getting married, and there weren't any suitable homes available at the time. I had already discovered a larger standalone home, and if it weren't for all of this, I would have signed the contract by now. Now that I've saved so much money, I watched Carrie speak on the phone. I couldn't help but think of the way she made it clear when I first found her a few years ago that she didn't want Jeff and that she didn't want to deal with the baggage, which she described as nothing more than a burden. She told me not to look for her again and that we should never see each other again for our sakes. Such a woman. So when the priest showed up for the rehearsal, he assumed I was the groom's mother and was going to wheel me through the door. However, Jeff's face went pale for a brief moment as the door opened, but he quickly recovered and told the priest that when we signed the contracts for the wedding venue, the priest had seen me before, and his expression changed when he heard what Jeff had to say. Jeff had brought me here, saying that I would go to the rehearsal as his mother, but now that Carrie was here, I was obviously out of place. Rehearsal. Heidi sent me a message informing me that the best orthopedic specialist had been contacted, and that I might be admitted to the hospital at any moment. She confirmed this one final time, but that's the son you've raised for 30 years. What if he changes his mind and realizes he needs your forgiveness? Soften maybe, I said, looking up at the singing trio on stage, but I didn't think he had any chance of turning around. Once I finished what I had to do, you could take me to another hospital because our mother-son bond was ending. I would give him one last present. The rehearsal was over, and it was I heard Mandy say in a low voice, "This place is too expensive. We don't need to come here. We still need to save up for a bigger house." Jeff waved her away, explaining that he had picked an exclusive restaurant for supper because they likely assumed I was elderly and hard of hearing. Don't stress over the money when you're with Gina, she'll cover the cost in secret. She's disabled now and will only drag me down later, so she'd better act herself. I can't make my real mom suffer, she's used to fancy restaurants. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom and pushed my wheelchair out. Given my condition, neither Mandy nor Jeff expressed any concern about how I would manage to use the restroom. Instead, they exchanged a look that made it obvious they thought I was going to pay the bill. I struggled to roll the wheelchair to the door, but after some time, I was unable to open it. Jeff, observing my struggle, stayed seated and didn't move. Mandy didn't bother either. Then, Carrie got up and said, "Let me take you to the restroom." Jeff got up quickly, his eyes full of concern for Carrie, saying, "Don't bother yourself, she can handle it on her own." When I looked at him, he changed his tone. "My mom has always been strong and proud, and she doesn't like to." Carrie shoved the wheelchair hard forward before I could say anything more, and my feet in the chair slammed into the wall. I felt a sharp pain and started to perspire. I said to Carrie, "Thank you, trouble others," in a cool voice, even though I was severing my relationship with Jeff. Carr's friendly demeanor in front of Jeff had disappeared, replaced with a harsh, demanding tone. "This is simply a warning." "Carrie, what are you doing?" "What am I doing, Gina? Didn't I tell you not to let that burden come seeking me? Why didn't you listen?" She sneered. "I have no money to take care of him. If he wants to call me mom, that's his business. I'll help if you want me to act like the respectable mother for appearances, but if you're trying to blackmail me, forget it. You've already gotten plenty of gifts from him, haven't you?" I had seen their chat logs, where Jeff had regularly given her costly presents and jewelry in recent years, the worry that I had yearned for from Jeff as a mother but never got, and Carrie got it all. Carrie snorted, her voice brimming with contempt. "What did you think I'd work for him for free? Don't get any ideas, because if you keep plotting, I'll make sure you lose Jeff. He's much closer to me now than he is to you." Perhaps our voices had become too loud, but Jeff and Mandy came running over just as Carrie, who had been so cocky just a moment before, screamed and staggered, her high heels tilting, and she fell to the ground. "Oh my God, Gina, I just told you to relax while I went to Jeff's wedding for you. You pushed me, and my foot hurt so much." Carrie was even more shameless than I had seen her a few years prior. The pain got worse, and I had to force myself to keep my face composed while I stared at Jeff, believing that after raising him for 30 years, he would at least do the same. "I used to think you were just a woman compelled by life to become a cleaner and raise me, so I respected you. However, what you did today has disappointed me so much that I froze for a moment and then laughed bitterly." He and Mandy helped Carrie up from the floor instead, and when they looked at me, all I saw was contempt. "Mom." After 30 years, I discovered that I had raised an unappreciative child. A message from my phone said that Heidi, my mother and son, and Jeff were no longer together. Jeff always felt that I was beneath him, embarrassing him. When his poor mother isn't there, we'll see what happens. I fought to get back into my wheelchair as soon as Heidi arrived. She noticed the injury on the back of my foot and wanted to confront him right away. "Let's see what kind of spectacle the polished people like him can make without me." Mandy moved a chair over, and Jeff knelt carefully to examine the car's axle. But I stopped her and told them that since you don't want to see me, I won't bother you, and I'll take care of my discharge paperwork on my own. You should concentrate on getting ready for the wedding. Mandy gestured to Jeff to get the money, but Jeff didn't even look at me, making fun of me. Instead, he said, "Don't worry, Mandy, there's nothing to keep her here. He wants to leave, so let her see who will take her in." Heidi pushed me out of the place and asked me angrily why I didn't argue with them. I was just glad I didn't have to pay for another meal because the money I had spent on his education and upbringing was already sufficient, but the money I spent on his house and his. That same day, I handled my discharge and had the foot surgery done by the doctor Heidi had arranged for me. The procedure went well, and the doctor said I would be fully recovered in a month. Less than a week later, I got a message from Jeff's mother asking why he had asked him to leave the hospital without saying anything. It must have taken Jeff this long to realize that I had left the hospital. He must have realized by now that I already knew the person taking my place was his biological mother. "I know Carrie put you down, but she's a strong, successful woman. If you didn't provoke her, she wouldn't have bothered with you. She's just there on your behalf. Mandy is looking forward to seeing you at my wedding in a month." So he was only thinking about me now because he needed money, and when he saw that I was no longer in the hospital, he scrolled through his messages and said, "In my heart, only you are my real mom. Please text me back. Mom, you're being stubborn about your treatment. If you end up losing a limb, you'll still need Mandy and me to take care of you. You can only rely on us, so trust me, I'll take responsibility for you." I looked at my foot, which was already healing well, and told him, "Don't worry, you'll get my money on your." I hadn't planned to confront them on the wedding day, but since Carrie and Jeff were pushing me in this direction, I couldn't let them get away with it. Since it was time to fight back, I purposefully wore a bright outfit. With no one around, I could spend any money I had on myself. I sat in the farthest corner during the rehearsal, listening to Jeff talk quietly to Mandy on the phone. My mother assured me that she would give me the money today because she is now disabled and wouldn't dare turn me away or cause any trouble. Don't worry, the wedding officially started with soothing music playing. The atmosphere in the room lightened as everyone began to eat dinner after sharing their blessings, and I noticed Mandy looking unhappy. From a distance, everyone was remarking on how beautiful Jeff's mother was and how graceful she appeared. Jeff appeared to be disagreeing with her, so he got up and went to a corner to call someone. At that point, a loud ringing reverberated throughout the venue, drowning out all the noise. "Jeff, are you calling me?" I got up from the guest seats when Jeff turned around. His eyes widened in shock, fearing that my appearance would ruin his wedding, and he rushed toward me, asking, "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I told you to rest at home," he whispered. "You told me to bring you the money, didn't you? How can I give it to you if I don't come?" I held the horn, and my voice, despite the noise, was audible to everyone, including Jeff. Utterly irrational for not wanting me to go to his wedding because, in reality, I never let myself be a doormat. But when I was hurt and in the hospital, I couldn't afford to act hastily. My greatest life lesson was that one must know when to stand your ground and when to endure. If I had confronted Jeff at that time, I couldn't have guaranteed what this heartless son would have done to me, but now that I was completely recovered, I wasn't going to let anyone walk all over me. I wouldn't mess with a woman who has battled her way through life. The guests heard what I had to say and started to give me dirty looks, which I assume is Jeff's adopted mother. Adoptive mothers never really care for their children, and Jeff is so horrible. Did anyone else hear her mention that she came here to bring him money? If so, Jeff is completely out of line and has been protected by me. The genuine mother is already here, yet she still dares to create a commotion. Jeff's face turned red with embarrassment after hearing these remarks for a long time. Is it intentional? What's up with the horn? Mandy hurried over to comfort him when he became upset. Jeff calmed down for the sake of the money. "Just let her stay, she won't cause any problems." She gave me an impatient look, saying, "Hurry up and give us the money, Gina." I looked at Mandy, and to my surprise, the shamelessness of both her and Jeff was more than I could have ever imagined. Jeff firmly believed that if you don't give me the money, then fine, I don't need you anymore. He likely believed that I would continue to treat him like a child and be as forgiving of him as I always had been. He believed he had me figured out when he said, "My real mom can pay this money, Gina. Listen to me unless you leave the money and leave. Don't even think about me acknowledging you as my mother. You're embarrassing me today." Looking at the suitcase in my hand, his eyes were full of sorrow, and I asked, "Your real mom, do you have the money?" Looking at Carrie from a distance, her eyes darted away anxiously, but then again, "You're going to give the money to him anyway. Just leave the money and go." As soon as Carrie finished speaking, on the large screen behind her, a video started to play. It was 12 years ago, when Carrie was disparaging Jeff. "I've told you a million times that it doesn't matter how he's doing. If you adopted him, your child is not mine, and I don't have any money to take care of him." Carrie's voice was dripping with disgust and impatience as she said, "Raise him." Jeff's eyes widened in shock, realizing that he had put in a lot of effort to find his beloved, long-lost biological mother, only to learn that I had located her 12 years prior. Carrie had never wanted to acknowledge him, but I knew Jeff was too. Jeff was young at the time, and I didn't want him to suffer, so I told him that his biological parents must have been searching for him but hadn't found him yet. After all, what parent wouldn't love their child? Jeff had grown up in my care, protected by the idea that loving parents were a given, so he expected love and felt he deserved it. He had always tried to win her approval in the hopes that she would return him to his former class, but Jeff took 2 steps back and shook his head in shock, thinking that this couldn't be, that you should love me in this way. He never questioned Carrie's feelings for him, even believing that he should have lived the life Carrie led, dressing in designer clothes and attending upscale events. Could you not want me? Did Carrie ever tell you that she was single? I responded, what's so strange about a divorce? Didn't you get divorced, too? Even though she's divorced, it doesn't alter the fact that I was born into a wealthy family. But that a man's about to be my arrival broke Jeff's fantasy. A well-dressed man with a group of bodyguards walked in, yanking Carrie out of her seat and slapping her face with his hand. I've been providing you with everything you desire for so many years, money, a car, a villa, and you still dared to have someone else's child. Behind my back, Jeff and I completed a paternity test. You're done, Carrie. Jeff hurried forward to prevent them from harming his biological mother, but a bodyguard kicked him away before he could approach. The man fled in a flurry, and the only sound that remained was the sound of his agonized screams. It was only then that Jeff realized the mother he had always had was nothing more than a wealthy man's mistress. He was the child of this mistress and another man who was more hated than even a bastard child. His attempts to have Carrie defend his reputation had only made him look foolish. I've never considered anything shameful about making money with my own hands. The people who are always depending on other people to change their circumstances are the true embarrassment. Being a janitor was never a lowly job, and I am proud of who I am. Mandy looked at the suitcase with the suit I was carrying and pushed Jeff, who didn't have Carrie as his biological mother, if I didn't act now. Jeff's attitude changed drastically in that moment, and you're right, it was all my fault before. You're the only mother I have, and I've never thought less of you. His words made my heart sink. I should never have adopted him in the first place, and after the divorce, I should have remarried to give him a stable environment rather than always prioritizing him. The things I had carefully tended to had borne rotten fruit. If you want money, I'll give it to you. I put the suitcase on the table and took out a few bills, throwing them into the air. The phony bills fluttered down, and that's when it occurred. I'm not getting married to Jeff if there's no money today. You're just a janitor, and without me, you wouldn't even deserve to sit at the same table as my parents, let alone Mandy's parents. Jeff quickly realized he had been duped, and she snatched the suitcase from my hands. Everything is fake, Gina. Are you intentionally trying to cause trouble? Didn't stop staring at me with the same contempt as before, so I calmly took the horn and stated, you're right, I came here to cause trouble. I was nice to you, but you, behind my back, labeled me a shrew. Now, allow me to demonstrate what a true shrew looks like. I stood on a chair and, after hearing, revealed every detail of the ignominious crimes they had committed. Everything made Mandy's cheeks flush with rage, and she sobbed as she walked out, clearly embarrassed by Jeff. His face was going from pale to red as his friends and family started pointing fingers and gossiping about him. Not realizing that I still had another surprise for him that night, he hurried outside to chase after Mandy. Received a phone call from Jeff. Gina. You're self-centered. All I wanted was for someone to attend the wedding in your place and provide my wedding house was sold, and you're lawfully interfering with other people's affairs. I retorted icily, do you realize that people's finances exist, before suing me? It was purchased with funds I provided, and the property deed is in my name. I offered to transfer it to you, but you declined. You insisted on asking me for money so that I could purchase a larger home because the apartment was too small for you. Now you, Heidi, and I were already traveling overseas, so I hope you locate a great, large house that you can purchase on your own. I had no time to dispute with an unappreciative youngster, and my best years were spent saying nothing to Jeff before age swiftly arrived. I had enough money to compensate for the 30 years I had sacrificed for them, ahead of me, and without children to support. Others, I was surprised to learn that Jeff would definitely despise me and never again bother me after the wedding. After returning from a trip overseas, he exclaimed angrily, it seems I underestimated just how shameless he could be. I blame you for this. Mandy is going to end our relationship, and you're having a great time on vacation, aren't you? I choose to selectively tune in, ignoring his allegations, and I still need to save some money for a large house. He was no longer entitled to a medal in my life, Gina, and I'm speaking to you. With a few $100s, I could purchase a large home and possibly win back Mandy. Jeff started using more direct threats after I didn't reply, but none of them had any impact on me. I ignored him over time, and he saw my determination change from incredulity to disappointment to fear. That the woman who had always supported him, his mother, would never shield him the way she had throughout his panic transformed into a defenseless puppy, but I decided to disregard him, put everything behind me, and move on. Regardless of the cruelty and betrayal from my son, my life eventually began a new chapter. Refused to sink into self-pity and instead decided to rethink my life. I created the Adversity Mother Support Fund after putting my hard-earned money into a worthy cause, especially AIDS abandoned children and single mothers, assisting them in rising to their feet and discovering their own worth one day. Clothed simply yet elegantly, and when I stood on stage for a financing ceremony, my eyes were fixed on the kids in the audience, who were well-groomed and had radiant smiles on their cheeks. I felt content and at peace when I looked at them. Since every grin represented the suffering and sacrifices I had previously made. Something I had never encountered previously, and I had at last discovered my calling to help others and soothe my own heart. After the ceremony, I left the stage and pulled a young girl with a sweet face gently at my sleeve. In that, my heart shook when I saw the identical expression Jeff had in the orphanage, so I got down on her level and whispered, as if she had discovered the right family. The girl's eyes brightened, and she grasped my hand warmly. A comfort she had craved at that instant. I realized the transmission of hope and love never stopped, so I embraced the new life that lay ahead of me and let go of the pointless baggage of the past. I gradually rediscover my love for life as time passes, and I resume my childhood hobbies, particularly painting, and I started volunteering at a nursing home through gardening, spending time with a group of senior residents who were about my age. I went to paint with the senior residents on a spring afternoon, and as I watched them add color to their canvases, I felt as even though I had gone back to my younger self, the self-centered version of myself I had blossomed. A sunflower with sunlight illuminating each petal, its hues radiant and cozy. It turns out that the colors that are the brightest are those that no one else can see, I thought to myself as a retired teacher sat next to me. As we discussed color ideas and related anecdotes from our past, at that point, I felt as though all my previous feelings of loneliness and anxiety vanished, and I stopped being the selfless woman who sacrificed everything for other people. Someone who could live for herself. I rediscovered the purpose of life and the value of spending time with the elderly. Since I had always desired true equality in relationships, I had at last discovered my spiritual haven. In contrast, Jeff's world had long ago fallen apart shortly after the wedding, in contrast to the new life I was choosing. Jeff wasn't ready to accept Mandy's divorce filing at first, but she quickly left him a menacing voicemail. Don't ever rely on your mother. Do you believe you can still get money from her after all of this? Once more, Jeff wasn't able to accept it and kept pleading with Mandy to be back together, but it was all in vain because she had grown weary of the Carey's connection and could no longer stand it. In the meantime, her sugar daddy fired her. And her secrets were revealed that she now made ends meet by selling her jewels, and Jeff started to feel the consequences of his coldness and brutality. Once, when searching through things in our previous house, he showed me that it was a reckoning. That eventually caught up with him. At home, Jeff found a yellowed bankbook with entries for his tuition and travel costs. Every penny stood for the unending love and sacrifices I had made for him, and Jeff's heart ached as though I could hear the splintering sound inside of him. This money was all that I had saved for him through my hard labor. Jeff realized how much I loved him and all that I had sacrificed, but it was too late. He was no longer the haughty young man he had been. At one point, Jeff discovered that his fortune was disintegrating and that he was experiencing both material and emotional collapse. He felt completely lost as a result of the devastation of his relationships, and he made a valiant effort to win Mandy back. All for nothing, Jeff started to experience the crippling fear of loneliness without the assistance he had previously depended on. Attempting to escape the situation with almost all he owned, reality struck him hard that day. Time and time again, right before he left, he got a call from Carey, who exposed his genuine hypocrisy. The character of his once respected mother, whom Jeff had thought would provide him with an escape route, made him realize that he possibly. 10 winters later, I was sitting in the activity room. He would never be able to return to the life he had once led or let go of those burdens. Among a group of kids at the orphanage, we talked about family and maternal love, and I politely responded to all. I asked the adoptive parents' queries, "What is a mother?" in a voice as gentle and warm as flowing water. In the event of rain, your mother will hold your umbrella, but keep in mind that sunlight is streaming in through the window, warming my silver hair and illuminating my face at that precise time. As if all the hurt and treachery had vanished with the breeze, my eyes were serene and unwavering. I had at last discovered my compassion tinted my voice as I said, "Life never wets your wings trying to dry someone else's feathers." It was with a sense of relief that I recognized I had changed from being a woman who lived for other people to a woman who lived for herself.